What was the "I'm fired aren't I" moment you experienced or witnessed? I used to work in a call center for a supplemental insurance firm. One day I was making enrollment calls to employees of one of our clients, making sure to leave voicemails if they did not pick up so they can call back. One of these calls kept cutting me off mid-voicemail and prompting to press 1 to leave a voicemail. I assumed their voicemail wasn't actually recording as to why it kept cutting me off. After several attempts on leaving a voicemail, I just exclaimed "son of a b" and hung up. An hour goes by and the president of my company calls me into his office with the call center manager. Turns out that person's voicemail was recording the entire time and had all of the audio. Even worse, it was the voicemail box of the CEO of our client company that I was calling. He literally played the audio in front of us. It was hard to explain my way out of that one. Holy crap, I just had to deal with this last week. I was a customer, not a worker, so I don't have anything to worry about but some weird butt voicemail that says leave a detailed message and 15 seconds and repeats the message. But if you press 1 to record, it just continues reading the message. I tried 3 times and swore and hung up. Whoops. The video of Nintendo of Russia's CEO swearing while not realizing he was on live video. He walked up behind 2 people playing Mario Kart and somehow managed to miss the fact that they were playing Mario Kart competitively, that there was a camera pointed at them, and that multiple people pointed out that they were on live video. So this Mario Kart live stream has the CEO in the background cursing at his employees for being incompetent. In addition, he's apparently really bad at economics and lost the company a lot of money by refusing to stock a game and running out of units to sell, along with being accused of sexual harassment. I have no idea if he was actually fired, though. He hasn't been fired, but Nintendo is doing an investigation. I would not be surprised if they do fire him though. Co-worker while being caught not performing count procedures at a prison. All that was required of the officer was to walk past 84 cells and confirm breathing bodies. Rank comes down to see where count was, finds co-worker sleeping in supply closet, attempts to wake Jigger having already failed. Rank then finds the officer's already completed count sheet in his lap, meaning it was filled out in advance, which is grounds to be immediately fired. Co-worker just hangs his head and starts grabbing his belongings before being escorted out. When I was working day shift behind the bar in an Irish bar restaurant in France, a waitress brought a table of 2 their food. They were having different burgers, and the waitress never verified who was having what before putting the plates down. She went off to take another order, and the first table called her back to say that she put the wrong plates in front of them, and she needed to switch them. She stared at them for a moment. I could see the wheels and her head turning, and she just grabbed the burgers, not the plates, and switched them, looked the customer dead in the eye and said bon appetit and walked off. The place was, and remains, an absolute shitshow as far as treatment of staff goes. Everyone was constantly stressed and on their toes, and the running joke was to tell new staff that if they did something wrong they would be held accountable and punished, and if they didn't do anything wrong, well, they would be punished anyway. All that to say, when she came over to the bar again, all I could think to say to her was that was freaking funny, but you know you're fired, right? I was working as a manager for a parking garage at a hospital in my early 20s. Supervising the valet crew was part of my job. A lot of the valet guys were either 20-somethings without much direction or 60+ guys working a job in semi-retirement. One of the older fellas mistook the gas pedal for the brake while trying to drive a heavily modified transport bus, modified with lifts, gurney strapping points, etc. He totaled 6 cars before the bus finally came to a stop. I ran towards it thinking he was probably hurt. Before I got there he hopped out of the bus, shook his head and looked at me. So, I'm probably fired, right? I don't remember what the final total was on the insurance claim, but yes, he was fired. I really want to see a video of this. I don't think my imagination is doing it justice at all. I spoke out in a clearing meeting. It's a safe space about all the upper level hiring and blatant lack of promotions coming from a consultant who was handpicking all these new hires. I was fired a couple weeks later for unclear reasons. Eat a dong, go pro. At the time, my job was testing the front end of a large billing database. Manager told me to test on beta. At the time, I thought of beta as a staging environment with mock data, not an alternative front end to our production database, which it never should have been. When I test, I always use obviously fake numbers. So here I am, in a production DB, making bills. And anyway, the next week a real life customer wanted to know why he had a bill for $420.69. Surprisingly, I didn't get fired. At that point, I was working a baseball game with a new umpire. First year, fresh 18-year-old. I was on plate so I was chief umpire, while the one base coach was going at the new kid non-stop. But I like to let them handle it however they want and talk with them after the game. Anyway, bottom of the fifth the kid had enough. He turned around and just screamed at the coach. "Shut the frick up, I'm sick your crap." The coach went livid and I ran up the line. He starts screaming at me how could I let him talk like that and how he'll never work again. I calm him down and talk to the kid. He's clearly nervous and asks me if I think they'll kick him out for that. I tell him no and to watch me. We walk back to the coach. He's got a smug look on his face. So I tell him, "Now coach, my base umpire here did lose his cool. But to be fair, you've been a complete butthole all game. Now get off my field." Talked with the kid after the game and I explained he's fine. While losing his cool like that isn't the way to handle it, it's not at all uncommon and to just handle it sooner before he boils over. You're the umpire. It's your field. You're in charge. Judge, jury, executioner. Don't use it too much, but never be afraid to use it. I mean at 18 you're still a kid and the idea that you have authority over a coach twice your age is a new concept that they are still timid about using it. I was 16 and working in a Chinese restaurant. I went to put soy sauce on a table for 2 customers who were waiting for their food. The sauce slid off my tray and onto the interior of one of the customers' leather jacket. It went everywhere. He was really nice about it and in the end my boss just made fun of me for about a month. I was working the cash register at a pet store about 2 weeks after starting when a woman came up, bawling that her dog just died and she was returning all of these medical supplies, all small but expensive items from the same aisle. Not that I knew that at the time, without a receipt. Every time I tried to say something, she would just bawl harder. I felt terrible, so I returned them, gave cash or a gift or something. A week later, I get called into the office, and my manager informs me that she stole those items and then returned them to make money. Needless to say, I wasn't there long. I hated that place. People get mad when nothing can be done without a receipt, but that's the exact reason why they ask for a receipt. Don't feel bad though, it's easy to do and even retail vets do it. Somewhat related. I was working at my parents' convenience store and a lady came in demanding to see the owners and that she would be having many words with them. All because I made her pay for her gas before she got it. We do this for everyone. So I tell her she can call them from my phone since they were at home. She screams at me some more about seeing them tomorrow in person and leaves. I tell my parents while expecting them to laugh it off. And sure enough their exact words were, "Oh, that lady's a freaking psycho, haha, just ignore her." Never saw that lady again and she never called them. I have to. 1. I worked for a call center doing telemarketing for a few years. Had a call that was a little out of the ordinary. I talked to my supervisor to get permission to proceed with the call given the unique circumstances. Boss gave me the go ahead. I made the sale. 2 days later, I'm called into the manager's office. She's in there with the company legal team. I walked in, she asked me to close the door in a very stern voice. Turns out, my boss was involved in some pretty shady practices, and the client had listened to my call. I was laid off. My boss was terminated and legal action taken against him. 2. When I worked fast food, we had a customer order a chicken sandwich. No mayo. The cook was making it and forgot that it was no mayo. The customer saw him put mayo on it and corrected him, again confirming that it was no mayo. The manager was at the counter with me. The cook was in the back fixing the sandwich when he decided to use a wet cleaning rag to wipe the mayo off the bun and keep making the sandwich. The customer saw this and was rightfully upset. The manager saw what happened and fired the cook on the spot, then took the cook's spot in the kitchen. The very next day, I began training to be a cook. I got a job designing refueling trucks for airports when I was 20. I knew how to draw things and weld a little, but that was it. I made it about 3 years before we got bought by another company with real engineers. I fricked up often. I don't even recall what it was this time. Probably just something not fitting at all. But I got fired. I knew it as soon as they asked me to come to the office. I still see trucks I designed when I travel. It's an odd industry with very little competition. It was like working at Monster Garage. Considering my lack of any qualifications, I think I managed to pull off some crazy crap. I still see trucks I designed when I travel. I'm imagining the car Homer Simpson designs but with a fuel hose. I worked for the property management company I rented from. When I moved out, they thanked me for renewing my lease and asked me to leave an anonymous review. I did, and I expressed several complaints I had as a renter. Massive urine stain, broken light switches, absurd mandatory $30 filter delivery program that delivered the wrong size of filter, and unresponsive property manager who addressed none of these issues all year, etc. After submitting my anonymous review, my boss emailed me asking me if I left the review. It had my address, name, phone number, and email listed. I was amazed when I wasn't fired right then and there. I trained the new guy 3 months later and was let go when I finished training him. I now make $6 more an hour and never have to use my time off pay to fill in the shortage of hours. I managed a homeless shelter and had an employee leave after about 30 minutes of her shift. She said she needed to get something from her car. The primary phone we used for the shelter was a cell phone. It helped with folks who didn't have minutes to call or service but could text with Wi-Fi, and she left with it. She was gone for several hours and wouldn't answer the phone. I remembered that we had location tracking on the phone and I used it to find that she was a block away from the shelter. I was so frustrated with her at this point that I walked down there. I found her high as a kite on M and she had completely forgotten that she was supposed to be at work. I told her that she had the phone and we needed it and to call me the next day. The next day, she showed up for her shift and I pulled her into my office. I had already spoken to HR and she was definitely terminated. I asked if she could tell me what happened the day before and she pretended to not know what I was talking about. We had cameras that showed her leaving 30 minutes into her shift. 3 other employees and myself who were there and would attest that she was not, and the phone tracking. She sat there and straight up lied to me, saying that she was there on shift and nothing was out of the ordinary. I freaking wish that she would have just said, "I'm fired, aren't I?" My boss made a terrorist joke about me and I said, "At least I get 72 wives instead of losing one to some butthole I don't even know." He was going through a divorce. I still think it was worth it. If you're going to make an edgy joke, you should be ready to receive one back. I worked as a shift manager at an auto parts store. Long story short, I reported a guy distributing drugs from the store to the store manager and police. 2 days later, an auditor came in from regional and started accusing me of stealing, and I was so confused, and next thing I know I'm resigning under duress for something I never did. Turns out everyone was in on it and I ruined their gig. I was young and raised in a pretty sheltered home, so I had always assumed adults had integrity. This was my second job. I was 19, working as a housekeeper in a resort for about 3 months. It was one of the last rooms we had to clean for the day and it was completely trashed. Was so tired and overwhelmed with everything I forgot to clean the rubbish bins. My manager came through and double checked everything and found what I had forgotten and proceeded to give me the longest lecture of my life. That's not what got me fired. She pinned a bunch of her frick ups on me. Like how once I was cleaning a room with her and she didn't check a blanket folded up in a cupboard because nobody uses them anyway and the next guest found a used condom in it. Or how she completely missed a room when assigning us ours and it never got cleaned. Horrid old cow. At my last firm, I made a mistake that basically cost $30k. The partner chewed me out a bit and showed me how I had fricked up, but then at the end, he just said, "Now I bet you'll never make that mistake again." Basically, he figured that they taught me a very expensive lesson. Might as well get their money's worth. Well, I've been forgetting to do thank you notes for new clients for the past 2 months, so I might be in it now. I still have 4 hours in the day, so we'll see you mayo. A coworker accidentally dropped a database table for a major multi-million-dollar client. There is no part of the job where we'd ever need to use a drop command, but he did it all the same. Imagine going to a company like Amazon and just wrecking their site for a few hours. That's big money. Fortunately for him, he was just moved to customer relations since everyone loved him even if he was a dum-dum. Fortunately for us, I created a backup of the database before he started because I didn't have the highest confidence in him, which is also probably why I'm now a manager. Haha. I was the third key who locked up for the night at a coffee shop. I'd cleaned the place and put away this crock pot on top of the freezer for the night. One night, the power cord from the crock pot shut in the freezer door when I left. The door popped open during the night and all its contents melted out on the floor. I made a change to our McAfee account where I applied the EEPC, endpoint encryption, tag to all computers that didn't have it. I had been forgetting to do so as I was going and wanted to cover my tracks. 2 weeks later my boss asked who was making changes, and when I confessed she said, "Congratulations, you just encrypted our SQL servers." Fuck me. I went over someone's head and evacuated a casino due to a bomb threat. I got the call from the police saying they are on the way due to a bomb threat and they want everyone outside now. In less than 30 seconds they were on site. I called security and told them what was going on and we evacuated the casino for over 4 hours while the cops looked for a bomb. I get a call from the general manager who was pissed off that I gave the order to evacuate rather than the duty manager. He said that I had no right to do that and there are people being woken up all over the country from media relations to investors regarding this incident. I explained to him that at the end of the day the police made the call to have the building evacuated and if I didn't give the order the on-duty manager would have, and if he didn't there would be cops coming in and ordering everyone out. I got hauled into the office a few days later. I was asked why I didn't read the manual on bomb threats when it happened. I just can't believe the level of stupidity armchair quarterbacks have sometimes. I was 15 or 16 coming in for my third ever shift at a pizza joint. I was stoned in the way you can only be as a 10th grader, where you're thinking that you're sly but everyone can tell because you smell like weed, cheap body spray and have Cheeto dust around your mouth. I smoked a blunt like 10 minutes before coming in, and as I started putting my gloves on my manager came up and said, "Hey man, go talk to F in the back. He needs to give you your new hire drug test." I was freaking out. I had just gotten my first car and needed the money, so I started sweating it thinking I was gonna get booted. Right as I went to knock on the owner's office door and accept my fate, everyone started laughing at me and telling me it was a joke. That's how I found out all my co-workers smoked weed. Happened about 20 minutes ago. I messaged our CEO saying that our benefits are crap. Swore I'd be gone. He agreed and told me to look into it more with HR. Go figure. My boss hadn't paid me for over 2 months, so at one point I demanded the money to be on my bank account by the next day, or else I'd sue them. I received my final pay the next day and I got rid of that awful job at the same time. You shouldn't have told them before suing. Could have filed them over and won more money at the same time. She accidentally started to delete the law firm's entire database and didn't tell anyone about it. What got her fired is that she wouldn't fully say what happened. Even if her story was 100% true, there's no way of fully believing her because she constantly makes up excuses for when she messes up. Nothing was ever her fault. I really feel bad, but apparently our boss had other issues with her, so this just made him not want her here anymore. This happened yesterday and we have 2 people interviewing today. So this was back in the mid-90s when I was the IT support engineer for a plastic molding firm. Some of our designers were having issues with the CAD machines, SGIRX workstations, so we were sent some replacement memory, 32 MB, really expensive server class memory, to replace the existing memory. The Wang engineer turned up a few days later to fit the replacement memory, and afterwards, I cleaned up the remaining crap and tossed the empty boxes into the trash compactor. A few days later, I get a call from Wang reminding me to return the removed memory modules. At which point I am frantically contacting the engineer to confirm that he hadn't taken the modules with him when he left. I was so sure I had just lost $$ worth of memory, and I was going to be fired. I'm pretty sure I was close to throwing up. I found the site manager, checked and discovered that the compactor had not been emptied, so we called up the disposal firm. I got a lift in the disposal truck out to landfill, and the compactor was emptied out on a flat area. I then spent 2 hours clambering around in my nice office work clothes looking for a ruby in a mountain of rocks, or maybe a cardboard box in a big pile of other cardboard boxes and other crap. And I found it. I went back to work, shoved the memory into a compact desktop and ran the BIOS memory checker until I was sure that it was good, and dispatched it back to Wang. And I never binned a box without checking to see if it was actually empty again. Right after uni I worked at a dental surgery as a receptionist. Pay was bad. Patients were always rude etc etc. One of my colleagues, we'll call her Dumbfuck, was a trainee dental nurse but also did shifts on the reception desk. It was a Monday and Dumbfuck strolled in 15 minutes late. She overslept because she had come back really late from a festival the night before. Not a big deal, it happens. But she seemed to be still steaming drunk from the weekend. Normally she would have been sent straight home, but there was no management in the morning for a few hours so it kind of went unnoticed. But the more and more Dumbfuck was interacting with the patients, it became apparent that she wasn't drunk, but rather very high, probably ketamine. She kept shoving her entire fist in her mouth to itch it because it was too dry and was starting to creep out the patients. 3 of them actually asked me if she was okay, because her behavior was so strange. Management arrived, quickly noticed Dumbfuck was out of her mind and dragged her into the back office to have it out with her. Apparently she kept trying to say it was her medication, but the area manager demanded to see a prescription, when she obviously couldn't provide one, even when she was offered a lift to her GP surgery to get one printed as evidence. She came clean that she was high and was fired immediately. Apparently being a dental nurse was her dream job, but obviously she couldn't have cared that much. Imagine if it was a nursing shift she had turned up for. Moral of the story, cool and sick if you're still high on drugs. TLDR, idiot strolled into work at a dental surgery while still high on drugs, got sacked. I did a dead-on impression of the boss's 12-year-old son. The boss was an uptight wealthy, multiple, business owner. I worked at one of his 2 car dealerships. This second dealership was about 2 miles away and we all talked on the phone regularly. This is how my impression was discovered. So, one afternoon, the phone rings and it's the parts manager at the other dealer. He has me on speaker and tells me who's there listening. He begs me to do the impression. I tell him that it might not be a good idea, but he assures me that it's only 3 of them listening and that the owner isn't around. So, knowing I was playing with fire, I launch into a freeform impression. I hit all of the stuff that this kid goes on and in about. I even imitate the kid talking to his dad, the owner, and I can hear screaming laughter on the other end. I even hear one dude gagging because he's laughing so hard. I freaking nail it. Then the other end of the phone goes quiet. I can still hear a few chuckles and people trying to recover. Then, in a clear and unmistakable voice, I hear the owner clearly telling me that he will call me later. I felt my whole insides drop. My legs went completely numb. Instantly, my hands start shaking and they go cold. I hang the phone up and quietly wait for the phone to ring. About 15 minutes later, it rings. Someone else answers it and puts the call on hold. I hear the speaker crackle. Odd craving. Dan on line 2. I'm fricked. I walk out into the showroom and look for the most isolated phone, and I pick it up. Do you know what it's like having a kid with special needs? Dan asks. This takes me aback as his kid is quite smart and in no way has any special needs. I stammer. Then Dan says, just kidding. Great impression. We were in a Wawa around 10 PM. For those of you not blessed to have Wawa in your state, it's like a combination Subway, gas station, bodega, and coffee shop. We were standing in line behind a guy who was taking a while to pay, so I left my fiancé there and walked a whole 5 feet away to return the candy bar I didn't want to the stand where I'd gotten it. In that time the guy had finished his purchase, and my fiancé turned around to look for me before stepping up to the register. We're talking, all told, maybe a couple second delay between the end of the purchase and when the woman who had been behind us in line stomped around my fiancé and cut in line ahead of him. I only caught her getting in front of him, so I asked my fiancé, who makes laid back people look uptight, what had happened. I thought maybe he let her go ahead or something. He said she just got in front of him when he didn't immediately put his stuff at the register. So I asked what the heck she was doing. She turned around and got crappy with me and said that we were taking too long to move the line up, because a whole few seconds with only her in line behind us was just intolerable, apparently. I asked if she'd ever been to kindergarten and learned how to wait in line. She ignored me. I continued being an butt to her, and she turned around and told me to shut the frick up. The thing was, when she turned I caught her while the name tag. I immediately went and got the manager and the woman hightailed it out of the store. The next morning I got a call from the DM or regional manager or something, and he was incredibly apologetic and promised me that he had reviewed what happened and she was gone as of that day. But that couple of seconds when she turned around to look at me and I looked down at her name tag, you could see the frick in her eyes, and it was glorious. I was working retail as assistant manager, and the very odd time I'd be late, maybe 5 minutes, but on the wrong morning my manager would kill me. One Saturday night anyway, went out with friends and got pee and a few, came back to my apartment, got to sleep about 7, work at 11 the next day, shop opens at 12. I wake up the next day at about 12:30 to numerous missed calls and texts from 2 of the guys that worked there. I slept in and the shop was meant to be opened half an hour ago. When I drove in and got there, they were sitting in the ground outside the shop with shoppers passing them. I'm thinking, could ye not have sat at a freaking coffee shop 20 feet away? It was almost 1 at the point. I thought I was done. My boss would find out. Why weren't the tills opened at 12? No sales put through until after 1. No one clocked in until 1. I was sure I was done. Somehow he didn't find out and he's still a good friend to this day. But I really fricked up and don't know how I got away with it. Well, if you are good at your job, I doubt one incident is enough to warrant throwing away all the good you do. I got dropped off at work one morning when I was the only one there, and everyone assumed we were closed because the parking lot was empty, and I got yelled at by my manager because I was irresponsible for not driving to work myself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.